So, good afternoon, students. This is going to be our last class, and in Unit 5, this is topic number 4, and topic number 5 will be discussing it in this class itself. So, let us start now. So, topic number 4 is performance parameters, delays, penalties, and liquidated damages. So performance parameters. So different types of performance metrics are needed for different types of billing. The first one is headline indicators, second is suggested metrics, third is building running costs, fourth is total facilities management, cost per meter square, workstation or employee, building cost or business revenue ratio, life cycle cost per meter square expressed as equivalent annual cost, and remaining liability. Reliability of the building and resilience to failure, availability against planned or reactive ratios, the effect of disruption on the business, ease of maintenance for a range of typical maintenance activities, time to reinstate, flexibility of the internal space, time and cost to move a single member of staff office room and reconfigure a group of desks. Utilization of space, flexibility of support systems, complexity of the building and its systems, FM, that is facility management perception, user perception, productivity of occupants, sick days or full-time equivalent, contribution to personal productivity, contribution to corporate image, and design quality indicator DQI assessment, particularly the functionality and impact measures. In continuation, desirability of location, environmental impact, carbon footprint, water footprint, energy use per meter square or per person. The next topic is delays, penalties, and liquidated damages. Construction delays. Construction delays are considered as time lag in completion of activities from its specified time as per contract or can be defined as late completion or late start of activities to the baseline schedule directly affecting specified cost. So as a result, there will be extensions of time required which will further result in fine, increased costs due to inflation, termination of contract, court cases, etc., or combinations of above stated factors resulting in delay damages. So the effects of delay in construction project includes disputes, negotiations, lawsuits, litigation, abandonment, overcost, and overtime. Construction delays are often a result of a mismanaged events and can be seen as a risk for the projects which is identified, analyzed and managed in a systematic process at inception, could be managed, minimized, shared, mitigated or accepted to give some good results and minimize chances of further delay. Delay in construction project has a negative effect on clients, contractors, and consultants in terms of growth in adversarial relationships, mistrust litigation, arbitration, and cash flow problems. A construction project may be regarded as a successful endeavor until it satisfies the cost, time, and quality limitations applied to it. However, it is not uncommon to see a construction project failing to achieve its goal within the specified cost, time, and quality. In order to counter the unforeseen delays beforehand, the realm of project management is restored to which helps mitigating the delays. Project management is the application of knowledge, skill, tools, and techniques to project activities to meet the project requirement and requires the effective management of the project management processes. Construction penalties. In a construction, the term penalty typically refers to a financial payment imposed in the event of a breach of contract. In Legion v. Hately, that is in 1983, Mason and D&J defined penalty as the nature of a punishment for non-observance of a contractual stipulation. It consists of the imposition of an additional or different liability upon breach of the contractual stipulation. However, penal causes, that is, those that impose a punishment, may not be enforceable. Until recently, it was considered that they must be based on a genuine calculation of actual damages incurred. In effect, therefore, penalties were not allowed, albeit the phrase was still commonly used to refer to the payment of damages or some other liability imposed upon breach of a contractual stipulation. Liquidated damages. Contracts generally include a clause making provision for the contractor to pay liquidated damages, that is LD, and sometimes referred to as liquidated and ascertained damages, that is LADS, to the client in the event that the contract is breached. And in building contracts, liquidated damages LD usually relates to the contractor failing to achieve practical completion, that is, completing the work so they can hand over the site to the client by the completion date set out in the contract. So they are often calculated on a daily or weekly basis. Liquidated damages are not penalties. They are predetermined damages set at the time that a contract is entered into based on a calculation of the actual loss the client is likely to incur if the contractor fails to meet the completion date. They might include rent on temporary accommodation, removal costs, extra running costs, and so on. They are generally set as a fixed daily or weekly sum, although there may be a more complicated formula where the works are phased, where may be partial possession, and so on. It is important that the method of calculation is precisely and firmly documented. So, if the contract prevents the client claiming liquidated damages, or if actual losses are significantly different to those that were estimated at the time the contract was entered into, then the client may pursue a claim for unliquidated, that is, actual damages, through the courts. So, unliquidated damages, which is actual damage, are damages the exact amount of which has not been pre-agreed and are typically determined by the courts. As liquidated damages are not a penalty, they must have been based on a genuine calculation of damages when they were set. So if they are not genuine, they may be considered a penalty by the courts and so will be unenforceable. Liquidated damages can be beneficial for the client as they remove their obligation to prove actual losses in the event of delay occurring. They can also be beneficial to the contractor as they limit their liability to a known amount in the event of delay. However, in some circumstances, the parties to the contract will wish to exclude liquidated damages. In this case, they should not simply insert nil as the rate of liquidated damages, as this can imply that the loss for unliquidated damages is also nil. Instead, they should make clear that unliquidated damages apply or delete the clause for liquidated damages. So I'll be sharing the next lecture. Please wait. So this is your last topic for this unit, which is force majeure, contract suspension and termination, changes and variation, dispute resolution methods, and construction cost. So, force majeure. A force majeure clause, French for superior force, is a contract provision that allows a party to suspend or terminate the performance of its obligations when certain circumstances beyond their control arise, making performance inadvisable, commercially impracticable, illegal, or impossible. So the provision may state that the contract is temporarily suspended or that it is terminated if the event of force majeure continues for a prescribed period of time. So the list of events to be included is a matter of negotiation between the parties. A typical list of force majeure events might include war, riots, fire, flood, hurricane, typhoon, earthquake, lightning, explosion, strikes, lockouts, slowdowns, prolonged shortage of energy supplies, and acts of state or governmental action prohibiting or impeding any party from performing its respective obligations under the contract. So if, for example, a hurricane occurred that shut down a port, the seller planning to ship its goods through that port would not be liable for late delivery of the goods. In the absence of a force majeure clause, parties to a contract are left to the mercy of the narrow common law contract doctrines of impracticability and frustration of purpose, which rarely results in excuse of performance. As such, the following elements should be addressed in a force majeure clause. Definition of force majeure events. What happens when an event occurs? Who can suspend performance? And what happens if the force majeure event continues for more than a specified period of time? Next is suspension and termination of contract. Suspension. A contract suspension does not necessarily lead to termination. The reasons may be contemplated in the contract. An example of a situation that could lead to contract suspension is the temporary inability of a supplier, contractor, or service provider to comply with the contract terms and conditions for reasons beyond their control, which is force majeure. So, whenever any deficiencies are observed during contract administration, the first step is to verbally address the issue with the other party. If results are unsatisfactory after this verbal notification, then it should be communicated formally and the other party given a certain period of time to cure or remedy the defect. If the deficiency is not remedied within the stipulated time frame, contract suspension or termination should be considered after taking into account other available remedies. So contract suspension should be considered before contract termination because one of the main objectives of procurement is to award contracts in order to satisfy particular requirements. Next, changes and variation. A variation, sometimes referred to as a variation instruction or variation order (VO) or change order, is an alternation to the scope of works in a construction contract in the form of an addition, substitution, or omission from the original scope of works. Almost all construction projects vary from the original design, scope, and definition. Whether small or large, construction projects will inevitably depart from the original tender design, specifications, and drawings prepared by the design team. So this can be because of technological advancements, statutory changes or enforcement, change in conditions, geological anomalies, unavailability of specified materials, or simply because of the continued development of the design after the contract has been awarded. In large civil engineering projects, variations can be very significant, whereas on small building contracts they may be relatively minor. Variations may include the following 5 points: alterations to the design, alterations to the quantities, alterations to quality, alterations to working conditions, and alterations to the sequence of work. So variations may also be deemed to occur if the contract documents do not properly describe the works actually required. Variations may not, without the contractor's consent, change the fundamental nature of the works, omit work so that it can be carried out by another contractor, be instructed after practical completion, and require the contractor to carry out work that was the subject of a prime cost sum. So in legal terms, a variation is an agreement supported by consideration to alter some terms of the contract. No power to order variation is implied, and so there must be express terms in contracts which gives the power instruct variations. In the absence of such express terms, the contractor may reject instructions for variations without any legal consequences. Next, dispute resolution methods. The most common and famous alternative dispute resolution processes used in construction disputes are mentioned below: adjudication, expert determination, litigation, mediation, and arbitration. Adjudication. As explained below, adjudication involves the incorporation of a third party to give a decision on the dispute. Now, the method is known as pay first, argue later, a method of dispute resolution. For this party must apply to the technology and the construction court so that the adjudicator's decision can be enforced. The adjudicator's decision will be binding until it is not revised by litigation or arbitration. These have certain benefits and demerits as well. Benefits of adjudication in alternative dispute resolution. It won't be involved in a day-to-day running of construction contract. It is a neutral person, it is a quick process, and the cash flow is maintained throughout construction process, and it is less expensive than court methods. Demerits: before the commencement, the dispute have to be aired between the disputing parties. It has limited power. If the part who loses does not pay, court proceedings are necessary to enforce the decision of the same. Next, expert determination. Whenever there is a valuation dispute, we go for the expert determination. This deals with disputes on special nature like construction disputes. The expert determination forms one of the informal system methods of resolution of disputes. The parties must agree to accommodate the expert determination through an agreement contract and agreed the expert determination will be binding. So the benefits are less economic way, less expensive, quick method, and less formal. Expert And the demerits are expert decision less tied to legal processes, enforcement of expert report cannot be carried out without court, and litigation in alternative dispute resolution techniques. So among different methods of ADR processes, the court proceedings are the common method used to solve the construction industry disputes. The advantages are the judge carries out the claiming process throughout and complex issues can be carried out and dealt. Binding and enforcement of a decision for the parties are obtained. And the disadvantages are the method is a slow process and it is most expensive and the proceedings relating to the dispute will not be confidential. Mediation in alternative dispute resolution. The method of mediation as explained before is a common method which is used to resolve disputes and the TCC court states that the parties with a disputed issue must be encouraged to go for ADR methods for solution. In most of the cases, the solution will be mediation. The benefits are the mediator will be an intermediate person who have no judgment or decision making and he just facilitates the discussion. Mediators are experienced in dispute areas and with the judges of TCC. The business relationship can be maintained. Mediation can go long for 1 to 2 days, bringing the decisions quickly. The happenings within the mediation are kept confidential and the mediator will help the parties to bring up a decision which is favorable for both the parties. The disadvantages are disclosing of an important aspect related to the argument may result in benefiting the other party. The dispute will remain unsolved if no sort of agreement has been made, so the cause for mediation will go futile. Next, arbitration in alternative dispute resolution. This method is another form of litigation and here the disputing parties will refer the dispute to a third party. He is called as the arbitrator. The material facts, documents, or relevant principles of law are the basis for which the disputes are solved. This method is used mainly for international construction disputes. Benefits of the same are, it is a confidential process, it is based on the experience of the arbitrator, the parties can choose them. Arbitration, unlike court proceeding, is a quick process and the method of arbitration is a flexible process. Disadvantages are the cost of arbitrator and arbitration venue must be taken by the parties. An arbitrator has limited power to take the decisions and arbitration possesses limited appeal rights and costs will be similar to court litigation. Next, construction costs. So makeup of construction costs. Construction costs from part of the overall cost incurred during the development of a built asset such as a building. So very broadly, construction costs will be those costs incurred by the actual construction works themselves and on the same projects may be determined by the value of the contract with the main contractor. However, the construction contract may include costs that might not in themselves be considered literal construction costs such as fees, profits, overheads, and so on. Many projects will also include costs that is not possible to determine when the construction contract is awarded. And there may be construction works that are awarded by the client outside of the main contract. So in addition, the contract is likely to allow for the contract sum to be adjusted as a result, for example, of variations to the works, claims for loss and expense or fluctuations, and it is because of these unknowns that clients are advised to hold a contingency. As a result, what is considered the actual construction cost of a project must be clearly defined and may not be finally determined until well after the actual construction costs have been completed. This is true even if a contract is described as having a fixed price or guaranteed maximum price. Cost planning. Cost plans evolve through the life of a project, developing in detail and accuracy as more information becomes available about the nature of the design and then actual prices are provided by the suppliers. Cost plans may include initial cost appraisals prepared during the feasibility study stage, elemental cost plans prepared during the project brief stage and carried through to detailed design, approximate quantities cost plans prepared from the end of detailed design through to tender, pre-tender estimates prepared alongside tender documentation, contract sum agreed with the selected contractor, and final account agreed once the construction works are completed. Other than the initial cost, appraisals, this all relate to the construction cost of the project. So Contingencies will tend to be the highest in the early stages of the project when there are the greatest number of possible risks, but can generally be reduced as better particulars about the project becomes available and some risks have passed or been overcome. Cost estimates. The method used for estimating actual costs will change as the amount of detail available increases. Initial cost appraisals might simply break down the overall project budget based on the information provided by the client, an analysis of comparable projects, and the experience of the cost consultant. Elemental cost plans might simply be the total construction cost for the project divided into the main elements of the works on a percentage basis. The approximate quantities cost plan is the first attempt to measure defined quantities from drawings, and it presents a more accurate picture of where costs are distributed. In particular, it draws the attention of designers to those elements of the design that are standard and those that are not, as a consequence, may be more expensive. The pre-tender estimate (PTE) is the final estimate of the likely cost of the works that are described in completed tender documents. It provides a final comparison with the budget and along with a cash flow estimate enables the client to confirm that sufficient funds area available before committing to seeking tenders. It also gives a basis for assessing and comparing tenders when they are returned. So if this meeting ends, you please join it again using the same link. Or let's do one thing, I'll end this meeting now and then we'll start it again and we'll continue from this itself.